Today, we are diving into one of the most epic origin stories ever told, the book of Genesis. It kicks off with, well, the creation of everything, the entire cosmos. But over the course of 50 chapters, the camera zooms all the way in until the story ends up focusing on just one single family.
So that's the big question, right? How does that happen? How do you get from the story of literally everything to the story of just one family? This is what we're going to call the narrative funnel of Genesis, and we're about to see exactly how it works.
All right, so the story starts on the grandest scale you can possibly imagine. It begins in a world that's described as perfectly ordered, a place of complete and total harmony. The book opens with this really cool rhythmic pattern. Over 6 days, God brings order out of chaos. Light is separated from darkness, sky from sea. Then the world is filled with stars, plants, and every kind of animal. And the very last thing to be created is humanity. This whole 6-day pattern of work, followed by a day of rest, actually sets up a foundational rhythm that you see echoed throughout the rest of the Bible. So humanity is placed in this perfect garden, a place with total freedom and connection to their creator. Everything is provided for, and there's only one rule. Just one, a single boundary. Don't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Seems simple enough. And then, a new character slithers onto the scene, a serpent. And it asks this simple but absolutely world-changing question. 4 little words, did God really say? See, it's a question perfectly designed to plant a tiny seed of doubt, to make humanity question the one single boundary they were given. And it works. They eat the fruit, and the consequence, it isn't some big physical explosion, it's a relational one. That perfect, easy harmony is just shattered. For the very first time, they feel shame, and they hide from the God they used to walk with in the garden. That perfect connection is now broken. And that one single fracture, it doesn't stay contained. It immediately begins to spiral outward, leading to a world that starts to completely unravel in this repeating cycle of human rebellion and, of course, its devastating consequences. You see that broken connection to God instantly fractures their connection to each other. We see this with the very first brothers, Cain and Abel. Cain gets consumed by jealousy, and he murders his own brother. And when he's confronted, his response is just chilling. Am I my brother's keeper? The tragic answer implied is no. And this violence, it doesn't stop with Cain. It multiplies generation after generation, becoming so corrupt and so pervasive that the story hits this incredibly low point. This verse just shows you how far things had gone, to the point where the Creator is filled with regret and a deep, heartfelt grief. The divine response is basically a hard reset. God chooses one righteous man, Noah, and tells him to build an ark to save his family and the animals. Then, the world is cleansed by a massive flood. And right after, God makes the first formal covenant in the Bible. That's a sacred, binding promise. He seals it with a rainbow, a sign that he will never again destroy the entire earth with water. But, it doesn't take long for humanity to find new ways to rebel. At the Tower of Babel, they all unite. But they're not uniting to honor God. They're trying to make a great name for themselves, to build a tower to the heavens and centralize their own power. So God scatters them by confusing their languages, forcing the kind of diversity and dispersion he always intended. And this moment, right here, leads to the single biggest turning point in the entire book. After all these huge stories involving all of humanity, the narrative camera suddenly zooms way, way in. It pivots from the whole world to focus on one single family. I mean, think about it. After these endless cycles of rebellion, violence, pride, what's the plan now? The world seems totally broken. How can this story possibly get back on track? The answer is surprisingly focused. Instead of another massive worldwide intervention, the new plan starts small. It all starts with just one. One person chosen from all the scattered peoples of the earth. And that one person is a 75-year-old nomad named Abraham. God comes to him and makes this absolutely staggering promise that from him, a great nation will come. And somehow, through his family, all the other families on Earth will find blessing. It's basically a rescue plan for the whole world, but it's starting with just one guy. Okay, but here's the crucial twist. This grand divine plan doesn't unfold with perfect people. Oh no, far from it. This plan works its way right through the middle of one of the most chaotic, messy, and dysfunctional families you could ever imagine. So let's just look at the next generation. Abraham's son, Isaac, has twins, Esau and Jacob. Now, Esau's the firstborn. He's entitled to the family blessing. But Jacob, the younger twin, is a schemer, a deceiver, and he literally steals it. And yet, Jacob is the one God chooses to carry the promise forward. This makes a really important point. This plan is based on God's choice, not on who's the most deserving. Later on, Jacob has this bizarre all-night wrestling match with God himself. He walks away with a limp, but he also gets a new name, Israel. And that name means one who struggles with God. This name becomes so important, it ends up defining not just him, but the entire nation that will come from him. The story then reaches this incredible climax with Jacob's favorite son, Joseph. His own brothers, insanely jealous, sell him into slavery. He ends up as a prisoner in Egypt, totally forgotten. But through this wild series of events, he rises from the pit to the palace, becoming the second most powerful man in all of Egypt, just in time to save everyone from a terrible famine. Years later, his brothers show up in Egypt, desperate for food, and they have to bow down before this powerful prince, having no idea who he is. When Joseph finally reveals himself, he says this incredible line, which is really the thesis statement for the entire book of Genesis. It's this profound idea that even the worst things people do, the most evil intentions, can be taken by God and rewoven into a plan for redemption and good. So the book of Genesis doesn't wrap everything up with a neat little bow. By the end, the family is safe down in Egypt, but they are miles away from the land God promised Abraham all those years ago. The promise is still alive, but it's far from fulfilled. The book doesn't end with a conclusion, it ends as a perfect setup for the next chapter of the story, the book of Exodus. And that leaves us with this final, powerful question to think about. Genesis presents a God whose master plan doesn't just work around human failure, it seems to actively work through it. So what does it really mean for a plan to succeed, not in spite of our worst moments, but directly because of them?